Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Edge of Tomorrow. Episode 13. Chapter 102. The entire room held its breath. Fear was a smog that thickened the air and rushed into my lungs like fumes of bleach. It stung and burned, nearly making me emit a nasty cough. You could feel the tearing and shattering of alliances, opinions being formed and beliefs being questioned. It wasn't every day the high table took in a potential soul eater. Some instinctual side of me told me to use my gift, to tear the life from Marcus before he could utter another order. Marcus's eyes held mine, ice blue and full of acknowledgement. There was something strange in his perfectly cultivated emotions, a sort of interest that bordered on GG. The pieces clicked together in my mind, when ever so slightly, he tipped his head at me. "Your move," it said. A question stood out in my mind, one that made my stomach sink. None of us had thought of it before, least of all myself. That guard I had killed at the decrepit house, we had left him there. Did Marcus know what a soul eater's victim looked like? Judging from the look on his face, I'd say he knew exactly what it looked like. He was waiting to see what I would do to see if I'd unleash my power, or if I'd surrender to remain hidden. I didn't want to believe it, just as I didn't want to believe I had killed so many people already. Such a far cry from the girl I had been only months ago, from the human whose views never strayed from black and white. The guards that ringed the room stepped forward, forming a semicircle around the booth that held all of us. I tried to glean some bit of emotion from them, but for them, this wasn't personal. They were following orders, no matter how callous they might be. Garrett's face was grim, set in harsh lines that looked chiseled from stone. I could feel the defiance in his emotions, the hatred and resistance radiating towards Marcus. Something inside my stomach fluttered at the thought of him, no matter how selfish the reasons might be. The fact that I had people I could trust not to turn me in, not to abandon me when things became too hard, it meant more to me than anything in the world. 3 of the guards stepped forward, all with dark hair and expressionless eyes. Strapped to their waist was a silver knife with a jeweled hilt, and a dark-colored pistol that I was near positive shot silver bullets. One held a pair of thick silver cuffs in his hands, and something must have flashed behind my eyes, because they finally had the nerve to hesitate. Just as they reached the booth, we all stood in, the main doors to the conference room slammed open. Everyone's attention was diverted, even the guards who were tasked at retrieving me. It wasn't the noise that caused for such prolonged attention, but the man who came strolling through. "Alec!" I exhaled, my panicked eyes darting up to where Cade stood. Alec waltzed into the room, down the carpeted path that separated the various packs that chose to attend. There were more now than ever, piling up as the staff continued to fill the room to max capacity. I had to give it to him, he was laying it on good. The crowd couldn't feel the exhaustion in his bones, or the way his limbs felt sore and unused. Like a true alpha, he showed no others his weakness. He had changed into a dark button-down with grey slacks, and had the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was freshly washed, still shimmering from the wetness. The stubble that had once coated his face was shaved, revealing smooth skin. The dimple in his cheek appeared as he smiled at the crowd, seemingly clueless to the mess he just walked into. Even his grin, which was aimed directly at Marcus Novak, seemed genuine and without fault. Marcus was still where he stood, eyes locked on my mate as he came to a stop at the center of the room. There was no emotion in his eyes, no admittance of guilt or acknowledgement. What a shame. It seems like I've missed out on a lot, but at least I've returned for the fun. Alec grinned jovially, giving Marcus a small bow. I'd like to thank Marcus Novak for my leave of absence, if you'd like to call it that. Hurling false accusations will not make your maid exempt from the rules of the high table. Marcus stood, demanding the attention of the room. He didn't glower at Alec, nor did he snarl in outrage. His tone was neutral, like scolding a mouthy teenager who needed to be taught a lesson. Since our kind was created, this has been our government, and we will not demolish centuries of success for the impulsive wants of a child. Fury coursed through me, hot and angry. I could feel the witnesses in the crowd that agreed with Marcus, that were outraged a child would stand against him. I might be a stranger to our customs and rules, but I will not live beneath your thumb. My voice shredded through the silence. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Both accusing and curious. There are many of us who see you for what you are, Marcus Novak. I don't fault them for staying silent, for protecting their packs and families while you stole their children and grandchildren for power. I refuse to hide while you try to lay claim on my life. I will not be your trophy, or your weapon to exact on the world. As the tension in the room ratcheted, Isaiah and Mara stepped forward. Their golden hair seemed to shimmer under the light. Both Mara and Isaiah met Marcus's gaze unflinchingly. They stood tall, fearless even though this man was the most powerful in our world. Mara turned her eyes to me and gave me a firm nod. We will stand with you, Luna Claire. Each and every one of us are responsible for the decay of our government, for the corruption we willingly turned a blind eye to. Mara's light accent rang throughout the crowd, causing a myriad of gasps and exclamations. I guess Mara was well known within the werewolf community. Her presence alone inspired two other couples to stand as well. A middle-aged Alpha and Luna had stood, both with dark hair and fine lines etched onto their faces. The woman smiled at me, and while I could feel her endless compassion, she was just a tad weary of me. The second couple looked to be a couple years older than the twins and I. Neither seemed afraid nor surprised as they stepped forward and turned their eyes to Marcus. No one else dared to come forward after that, but it doesn't matter. This was a start proof that there were those who noticed things, who wanted the truth just as badly as I did. I can hear the hushed whispers all around me. Some just simply want to leave, to retreat back into the safety of their lands. If only they knew how temporary that safety is. Others want the high table to take me in already, to defuse the situation before things turned violent. Little did they know, my mates would never allow for me to be taken by Marcus. There are just a few in the room who are questioning things, who are realizing things they had never noticed before, small things here and there, a missing child or two, a family moving in the middle of the night. On both sides, the guards are getting restless. Marcus's men keep inching closer, only to be backed up when the twins' men snarl and tense. You are a deluded child fed lies from enemies of the high table, traitors to our kind. They poison your thoughts, and someday, will own you and your abilities. I fear that our very species might come to an end should that day ever come. Marcus frowned, ever so concerned about the people he was tasked to protect. There were murmurs throughout the crowd, a ripple of fear and anxiety as some actually believed what he had said. I am not the enemy here, nor have I ever been. I urge you not to fight on your alpha's behalf, to stand down and yield to the high table so that my guards might bring her in. This is my only offer. The progression of this issue will have dastardly effects. A deafening bang rang out, thundering in my ears, tearing away all sound apart from a high-pitched buzzing. Strong arms that smelled of Cade had yanked me down, making my head swim as I struggled to catch up to speed. I saw a flash of red hair, and Garrett's concerned face before my eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of the chaos. Half the room of witnesses had ducked to the ground, startled from the shot that rang out. Those without the sense to duck immediately fled for the exit, shoving at the doors until they broke free. Cade pulled me to my feet, wrapping his hand around the upper part of my arm to keep me close by. I stumbled a bit, but managed to find my ground as we tried to get as far away from the fight as possible. I was too busy glancing down, at the guard who laid at my feet. The one who had jumped in front of the bullet hurling my way. As Alec caught up to us and took me in his arms before breaking out into a run, I realized something. It wasn't Desmond's face or the face of his men that would haunt me, nor would that guard trouble my memories. This man, the one who had given his life to save my own, I would never be able to remove his face from my head. It was a debt I'd never be able to pay, which made it even more important that I fight against Marcus. Guards swarm Marcus, keeping him safe should the fight get too out of hand. He isn't even interested in the fight, but is watching with murderous intent when Cade slashes his claws through a nearby soldier, and aids Garrett with keeping them back. "Get her out of here!" Garrett snarled, looking back once before slamming his elbow into the stomach of a guard. He glanced towards his brother, who had a busted lip, but was otherwise unharmed. Julian nodded once, already knowing what his brother was asking. Garrett locked eyes with Cade. "We'll hold them back. Stick to the plan, you know where to take her. We'll meet up with you as soon as we can. We've got to get her out of here, now." The twins' dad urged his sons with the voice of a drill sergeant, a far cry from the carefree father I had seen on numerous occasions. Alex scooped me into his arms and held me close, breaking into a run as I squirmed against him. It's not that he wasn't comfortable, and that I wasn't completely basking in his touch right now, but there had to be more that I could do. No, I didn't want to go around soul-sucking everyone, but I could at least run by myself. "Let me down, Alec," I demanded, giving him a stern look. Even out of breath with sweat beading on his forehead, the sight of him brought tears to my eyes. That wall in my chest threatened to break and fall, but I sealed the leaking seams shut before a lone tear could escape my eye. I couldn't break down right now, not when our lives were on the line. "I'll explain when we're somewhere safe." "All right, doll." The sound of his voice, and the nickname I had hated so much. I clamped my lips shut, unable to form words even if I wanted to. We skipped the elevators, which were now crowded with werewolves still trying to escape. Alec barreled through the metal door that read staircase so hard the glass rattled. He took the stairs 2 at a time, sometimes 3. Each time we passed a camera planted on the wall, he'd knock it down and crush it beneath his foot. We were 4 flights down when a rattle higher up startled us. As I glanced up through the metal railings, I watched as dark-dressed guards swarmed into the stairs. Their feet thundering down, closer and closer, was like my own personal march. One of the guards launched himself over the railing, dropping at least a floor before he came barreling down towards us. The twins' dad leapt into action, dodging the blade in his hand as it made a wide arc in the air. A few well-placed punches and the guard were currently tumbling over the railing. Alec finally set me down, but kept my hand laced in the entire time. I think he needed the contact as much as I did, especially after so long of missing that piece of me. Even further below us, another door clanged open. Even more guards stormed through, but these guards did not belong to Marcus. The men stopped just where we stood, when one stepped forward. "Luna Mara gives you her regards, and wishes to let you know she has made it out of the building safety. She will contact you once you make it out. We are here to ensure that." A man with dark chestnut skin and curly hair nodded at me. We kept going, thundering down the stairs as I listened to the battle between Marcus and Isaiah's men. I winced as another body tumbled over the edge of the railing, letting out a dull thud as it hit the concrete floor. On the bottom floor, the doors swung open. The guards that poured through were different this time. They were more heavily dressed, in vests that looked to be at least 2 inches thick. They had helmets on, and an assortment of things strapped to their waists. Something clicked against the metal railing as they tossed something further up the stairs. The twins realized what it was before I did, and darted to the door that led to the second-floor hall. Just as we barreled through, a bang sounded, and smoke began to spew from beneath the door. I ran alongside Alec, our fingers laced together. Everyone else kept up, keeping our eyes peeled for more guards that were sure to come. We had long ago given up creeping past corners and instead darted past them, trying to get as close to an exit as possible. We turned one corner in particular and nearly barreled into a young girl. Her hair was curled in tight ringlets, and her eyes were dark and intelligent. The tension from Alec and Cade vanished at the sight of her, as she clearly wasn't harming anyone at the moment. "Jasper needs to talk to you," she said in a childlike soprano, blinking once and then twice. I opened my mouth to answer, but wasn't sure what to say. Now wasn't exactly the best time. Before I could think anything of it, she's reaching towards me with small hands. The moment her fingers connect with my skin, the floor is torn from underneath my feet, and I'm tumbling head first into a suite that looks suspiciously like the one we had just stayed in. Leaning against the counter with a glass of amber liquor in his hand, was Jasper Fox. Chapter 103. Well, that was an absolute mess. Jasper snorted, moving an onyx eyebrow at me as he took a long drink from his glass. He seemed completely unbothered, more inconvenienced, if anything. It was then that I noticed we weren't alone. The little girl who had touched me bounced over to his side, placing a protective arm around his leg. She stared at me with hazel eyes, through hair the same color as Jasper's. I gaped at her for a few moments, still sprawled out on the carpet until the world around me stopped shifting. "She did rather well for her first time, didn't she?" a feminine voice asked, cool and collected as she analyzed me. I pulled myself from the floor, finally noticing the woman who sat in the armchair. She wore a tight black dress, but looked professional with her short heels and crisp shoulder-length cut. Her eyes were a warm shade of brown, despite the guarded look on her face. "Yes, she did." Jasper nodded, agreeing with whoever this woman was. Before I had the chance to snap at him, he directed his attention back to me. He tapped a nail against the rim of his glass, keeping a steady pace as he spoke. "I genuinely had no clue how little you knew until today. I might have been able to prevent this entire mess if you had known ahead of time." "Known ahead of time?" I scoffed. "If it hasn't escaped your notice, I'm trying to flee from this hotel, with my mates. Marcus has officially declared me his prisoner. Things have already gone to St, and I don't have time to stick around while you tell me the important truth that I should have known days ago. We have a few minutes, which will have to be enough," he replied, his tone tense enough that I held back my retort for a few seconds. "Delilah has made sure to notify your mates that you'll be catching up with them, should they manage to make it out of the hotel." I glanced down at the little girl who met my eyes fearlessly and gave me a wave. She looked up at Jasper, a question burning in her eyes. He gave me a single glance before nodding, and placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm Delilah, and I'm a white wolf too." She grinned up at me, missing just a few of her baby teeth. "I brought you here. I can go wherever I want, but Dad doesn't like to let me most of the time." I moved an eyebrow at Jasper, whose gaze hardened. He brought Delilah back to his side and took another long drink. Everyone always thought was Desmond's thing, but he had no more skill than a child at an arcade. "I'm among those you claim to have sat by while Marcus crept around in the dark." Jasper grimaced, but continued without interruption. I've also been crawling around in the dark, getting my hands. As you can see, we both have quite a bit to fight for. I'm no fool, to form an allegiance with you means risking quite a bit. I'm not one to trust easily, but you are the first I've come across that has a chance against him. I knew it that night, when you drained Desmond Deville of his life. Part of me wanted to deny it. I wasn't a KLR, but at the same time, I had KL'd those men. Even with all of my promises, I knew that I'd do it again if it meant saving the people I love. So, this is you wanting an alliance with me and my mates? I asked, unable to help peering down at Delilah. She was clearly a white wolf, the child of Jasper. It made me curious as to who the woman sitting in the chair was. Crystal is my beta, a white wolf as well. Jasper noted, catching how my eyes had strayed to the woman. I'm sure my surprise was obvious as it flashed across my face. The twins had told me briefly that the position of beta was nearly always given to a man. The rules forbidding women to take on high-standing roles had been abolished nearly 60 years ago, but there were still none being chosen. Against my better judgment, he is trusting you. Crystal frowned at me, drumming her manicured nails on the armrest of the chair. She leaned forwards, and I could feel the protectiveness radiating off of her. It was my gift for feeling emotions that kept me from being offended at this last bit. The information he gives you could destroy 30 years of work. If you betray him, or let this slip through your fingers, your abilities might KL me, but you will go down by my side. She's quite abrasive, it's my favorite quality. Jasper shrugged, making Crystal let out a dry snort. What I need to know, is that we're on the same page about everything. You both clearly know what I want. At first, it was my freedom. I just wanted to be left alone, but it's become so much more than that. I grimaced, clenching my teeth together as the smug face of Marcus Novak drifted through my mind. I don't know the full extent of what Marcus is doing, but it needs to come to an end. I want every single white wolf to be free, and every ounce of corruption removed from the high table. So young for so many aspirations. Crystal murmured, her chestnut eyes honed in on my face. Yeah, well. Human life wasn't working out too well for me. Turns out, I fare better here. I snapped back, my words sharp like steel. Then you'll find that we are on the same page, Claire. Jasper said firmly, bringing my attention back to the present. I could feel just a flash of fear behind his cold wall of indifference. Whatever he was going to tell me, it truly meant a lot to him and his pack. You hold some form of alliance with Zayn Novak, so I assume you know some of what he does. Am I correct? It wasn't exactly an alliance, I wanted to say. We more tolerated each other for the sake of getting things done on both of our ends. Truthfully, having Zayn Novak as an ally could change everything, but he was too far under the thumb of his father to break free. You are correct. I nodded, choosing simplicity over anything else. He is responsible for getting the wolves to the borders of his lands, it's the most he can accomplish without being caught. I transport those wolves onto my own territory, and give them everything they need to begin a new life. They are allowed to leave if they wish, but most stay and build something for themselves. Jasper said slowly, like he wanted me to remember every detail. He glanced towards Crystal and gave her a friendly smirk, making me wonder if she were a white wolf as well. Doing this has given me powerful allies. Ones that have dreamed of someone like you coming along, ones that are tired of hiding and ready to fight. That's where they've all been going. I chuckled incredulously. I'm not the only one with white wolves at my disposal, though the ones in my pack work for me willingly. Jasper said darkly, his eyes turning to stone. Marcus and Sebastian both have white wolves within their borders. That is how Marcus discovered your activities. I couldn't figure out how he had done it. I watched the security footage nearly 100 times, but then I found it. Rumor has it, Marcus is in possession of a white wolf that can see your memories through touch. She just so happened to be here today, a few inches from you on your way in the council room. Jasper promised to be in touch with us at some point, though he hadn't exactly given me a glimpse into his methods. He had given the twins an address to go to, a safe house where I'd be waiting for them. We needed to stay out of sight for a few days, to let Marcus's troops scatter as they veered farther and farther away. Then, we would emerge from the safe house and make our way back home. Jasper was right, alliances were a risky business. He was trusting me with the truth of his pack, and I was trusting he wasn't sending me to a room full of Marcus's soldiers. She can only transport herself to places she's been before. She doesn't need to roam the place, but a simple foot in the door will allow her free roam. Jasper explained, staying in the safe house will give us a constant connection until you must venture back to your pack. From there, we'll figure something else out. It was hard to doubt him when Delilah grabbed my hand in her own and smiled up at me, her childlike innocence not tainted from the horrible world we lived in. After seeing the fraction of softness in his eyes from his daughter, I knew that he had protected her well all of these years. "Are you ready?" she whispered, grinning up at me. "I think so." I nodded, smiling down at her. The hotel room around me twisted and warped before morphing into something else altogether. The Persian carpet became white and scruffy, and the antique sofa elongated into a modern-looking sectional. The brick fireplace against the wall was replaced with a long bar that spanned the wall. Decanters and bottles of expensive liquor sat unopened on the shelves. The scent of air freshener and stale cleaner was in the air, telling me someone had been here recently to clean the place. I stood just by a panel on the wall that housed at least 10 light switches. After a few tries, I managed to flick on the lights. 10 circular lights protruded from the ceiling, making me wince as it bathed the room. I descended 2 stairs to where the sectional was and plopped down. It was surprisingly comfortable given its flat look, but it did nothing to ease the nerves building in my gut. Waiting was the worst part of all of this. I'd rather be with Alec and Cade, fighting whoever might stop us from leaving. It'd be worth it to know that they were safe, that Tori and everyone else was as well. I flicked on the television that was mounted on the wall, and turned to the next channel for some noise. Within the silence, I could hear every creak and shift in this house. I contemplated grabbing the tablet, and gave in when my curiosity won over. There wasn't a password as I swiped upwards. The screen brightened as the tablet unlocked, revealing nearly 20 different screens. Live video footage from various parts of the house appeared, even one of me sitting on the living room couch. I clicked on one that showed the long driveway, all but shrouded by trees. The next tab held a map, with a small section circled in red. I chuckled dryly at the screen. I wasn't that much farther from the hotel, most likely only a couple hours away. If they were in wolf form, they'd make it here pretty quickly. Assuming no one was injured. From there, my thoughts continued to turn dark. I focused my attention on the tablet, using it as a desperate distraction. The last tab was on the internet, and looked like some kind of news channel website. In bold letters at the top was some catchy title, followed by a long paragraph. I refreshed the page and nearly dropped the tablet. It slipped through my loosened grip as an image of myself flashed on the screen. It wasn't just one, but an entire gallery of them. Me pressed against Cade in council room, a look of fury on my face. Another one where I was at the stand, my mouth opened as I declined all 3 of their offers. I felt oddly invaded, but couldn't stop myself from reading the paragraph beneath the gallery of photos. It said what I had thought. That I was dangerous, a powerful white wolf on the loose, running from the high table for acts of treason. Marcus Novak had all but declared war on us, all without issuing the formal declaration. I swiped the news article away, trying to force the numbers to stop swimming behind my eyes. The remaining members of the high table were offering a heavy reward for my capture alive, not dead. Jasper was playing his part, staying within the shadows to keep his own operation safe. I propped the tablet up on the table and stared at the screens as they showed me various rooms in the house. There was only one camera I was interested in, the one leading directly into the house. As the television droned on in the background, I watched the tablet and waited for my mates to find their way back to me. Chapter 104. I was ripped from what might have been the deepest sleep I've ever experienced to the shrill sound of an alarm coming from the tablet. It vibrated against the Persian rug on the floor, making me scramble even faster. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes roughly, tossing the blankets from my body in a rush. The tablet had fallen over while I slept, and I practically threw myself from the couch to grab it in time. I cringed at the harsh light from the tablet, but forced myself to look until the splotches cleared and I could finally see what was happening. My stomach sank and relief flooded me all at once. "We know someone's there, let us in." Tori's voice wasn't full of panic and fear, but aggression and determination. For a moment, it surprised me. She's always been confident and strong, but this was the voice of a Luna. I tapped furiously on the tablet, scrolling through the oddly in-depth security measures that encompassed the house. The boundary line within the forest that would set an alarm should something too heavy come crossing through. The cameras that surrounded the house and even peered off into the trees. Every single window, vent, and doorway had a sensor. Either Jasper Fox was paranoid, or he truly had some serious enemies to worry about. Finally finding the sensor for the main door, I turned it off and listened to the light whir of locks sliding out of place. The front door was wrenched open, and I watched in stunned surprise as Tori, Ava, and an unconscious and looking Zayn Novak tumbled inside. Neither Tori or Ava, who was pale and wobbling on two legs, could carry Zayn's weight anymore. The three of them fell to the ground in a pile of limbs, and quiet groans. Ava was first to remove herself from the wreckage, sitting with her back against the wall. Her onyx hair was a wreck, knotted and matted in places. Her thick eyeliner was smeared down her face, though not from crying. Tori looked much the same, haggard and tired, but still with that fierce light in her eyes. The man could stand to skip a few meals. Ava hissed, clutching at her head. First babysitter for Sleeping Beauty, and now rescue party. Not only does he owe me a new phone, but he better make sure his insane father doesn't kill my family for my involvement. The st I get myself into. Thank you, Ava. I might not know all that you risked, but I appreciate it. Tori said firmly, her eyes unwavering as they looked towards Ava. That seemed to smooth out some of Ava's anger, even though she did nothing more than shrug and grumble. I made sure to set the locks for the front door and came over to help the two of them. I'm glad the two of you are all right, but I'm assuming you didn't just stumble across Zayn. I said, trying to lighten things, but it was hard considering he was currently bleeding onto the floor. I offered out a hand to Tori, let's get him on the couch. I think I saw a first aid kit in the kitchen. You can tell me all about this while you patch him up. Hope Jasper doesn't mind some blood on his couch. Tori murmured, grabbing a pair of scissors to cut the shirt from Zayn's body. Her emotions were surprisingly under wraps as she focused on peeling the soaked fabric from any wounds he had. She wasn't doing this out of love or affection, but because we actually needed him. He was too great an ally to throw away, a child turned from his dictator of a father. I'm sure there's at least 10 other couches in this house, I commented, earning the smallest of smiles from her. The first aid kit was more like a first aid suitcase. I hauled it out of the walk-in pantry in the kitchen and brought it over to where Tori sat. Ava wobbled into the kitchen and grabbed a bowl of warm water and a rag before collapsing down on the couch with a bag of chips in hand. All of our abilities have drawbacks, she explained with a shrug, crunching down on a chip. I knock people out, so if I overuse mine, it can knock me out too. You'll find out what your drawback is, we all do eventually. I devour the souls from others, and experience the emotions of everyone around me. That feels like one big drawback sometimes. I chuckled lightly, though I had grown just a small appreciation for my magic. I'm sure it's saved you a time or two though. Ava pointed out with a nod in my direction. It has, but this world is a lot different from the one I grew up in. It's hard to undo that kind of thinking, that everything is black and white. I explained, with a shrug. I'm getting there, though. Every time I use them to save a life, I can't bring myself to regret that. Claire, could you come hold this while I stitch him up? Tori asked, gesturing to the blood-coated towel in her hands. I was as gentle as possible, but every quiet hiss from Zayn had me stilling. There were gashes along his torso, across his chest and up to the hollow of his throat. He had clearly been punched or kicked in the face, and was sporting 2 black eyes. On a positive note, the damage to his face would heal within a day or 2. The slices along his body, they would take a bit longer. Siler knife. Tori spat, threading the needle through one of the larger cuts on his body. It's going to take nearly 2 weeks for him to fully heal. You mind explaining this mess without me? Ava grunted from the other side of the couch. She was currently lying on her back, with a pillow over the top half of her face. I think I'm going to check out for a few hours. Yeah, I got it. Tori murmured, not turning her eyes from the task at hand. Nearly 10 whole seconds later, Ava's light snoring filled the living room. Tori glanced at me before returning her eyes to Zayn. I didn't exactly mean to leave them, you know. Things kind of changed at last minute. I know you wouldn't have split if it weren't important. I told her with a small smile, though it was difficult to feel happy while I waited for the twins to arrive. The kid Jasper sent gave us the address. I'm lucky I managed to memorize it or we would have been out of luck. She laughed, but the sound was brittle. Zayn groaned under his breath, which made Tori flinch softly. She ignored the reaction and continued stitching him up. We were running down the hall and I caught his scent. It was so strong, I knew he was close. I split off down another hall and could hear him as I walked further down. Turns out, I wasn't the only one lurking. I found Ava snooping from just a few doors down. What was she doing over there? I asked, guilty that my tone was just a tad suspicious. Tori didn't seem to mind and replied without skipping a beat, I don't know all of what he does in his father's pack, but some of these white wolves are actually loyal to him. Ava acts tough, but she was there to try and help him. She's actually the one who knocked the guards out. And what about his wounds? I questioned with a frown, not willing to believe his own father's guards were torturing him. The men were acting under his father's orders. Tori replied darkly, her emerald eyes turning to a deep shade of moss. I'm not sure why this surprised and revolted me so much, but it did. I suppose I wanted to believe there was some kind of limit to how cruel another person could be. Tori finished patching up Zayn and washed the remaining blood from his face and torso. His skin was angry and red, puckered around the slashes on his chest. The stitches would seal the wounds and help them heal just a bit faster and neater. I paid close attention to how Tori moved, with sure hands that lacked even the slightest tremble. Something about watching Tori close up the wounds on Zayn made a question form in my mind. A theory that I wasn't sure I'd ever actually test. I wondered if, since I could steal the life force from someone, could I give it as well? That train of thought was derailed when Tori flicked on the television and thrummed through the channels at random. Without some noise, I'm going to fall right asleep. She sighed, brushing some crimson curls away from her forehead. You don't have to stay up with me, I urged, more than understanding considering the three of them had quite literally fallen through the doorway. Nat, I'm not leaving you to stay up alone. She shook her head, her L.P.S. set in a way that I knew meant she wasn't changing her mind. I know you won't sleep until they get here. I settled into the couch beside her, snorting when Zayn began to snore softly. Some family television show was on, one where that cheesy background laughter sounded every time someone said something mildly funny. Halfway through an episode, Tori's quiet words caught my attention. You do understand why I went back for him, right? She asked, her eyes still locked on the TV screen. Regardless of what Ava says, I didn't save him because of the bond. I did it because it was stupid not to. Believe me, I understand. I replied, letting her tell me what she wanted. Things between Zayn and Tori were beyond complicated. Tori knew what she wanted, and wasn't afraid to go for it. Zayn had to live in the shadows, splitting who he was and who he needed to be into two different people. There was a wall inside of him, one constructed by his father's cruelty and hate. It barred his emotions, forcing them away from me and himself. The glimpse I had allowed me to understand how she felt, and I knew that pressing for information was the last thing she needed. We broke into the room that they had him in. Ava knocked the guards out and I went to unlock his cuffs. Her voice grew softer, and her eyes darted over to where Zayn laid. He wasn't completely lucid, but he was mumbling. He was saying a lot of things, and when he saw it was me, it got worse. I wanted to ask what he had said, my own curiosity brimming, but I suppressed the question even as it bubbled on my L.P.S. I let her take her time, mulling over what she wanted to say and omit. He said it was too dangerous for him to have a mate, that he never was meant to have one. Her voice was whisper soft, to the point where I thought I might have imagined the entire thing. He also said that he needed to protect me, even if it meant crushing my heart. The conversation shattered, and that cheesy laughter trickled in the background, as I found myself completely speechless. I had never been one to give advice of any kind. Even though I could feel her emotions like they were my own, I had absolutely no clue what she should do next. Clearly, Zayn had made up his mind, but he also firmly believed we would lose against his father. Minutes faded into hours, making my eyes sore and dry from staring at the brightly lit TV screen. I had thought the family TV show might grow on me, but it actually had the opposite effect. I sighed in relief when Tori changed the channel to some alien movie. A little fantasy might do us good, she muttered, snorting when a grotesque-looking alien popped onto the screen. Speak for yourself, werewolves were fantasy up until a few months ago. I chuckled quietly, needing just a moment or two of normalcy before reality seeped back in. For all I know, those slimy things are real. Believe me, if they were real, I would have told you by now. She managed a small but genuine smile, while wrapping a fur blanket around her shoulders. I would have told you while Alec and Cade were pursuing you, for lack of a better word, if they hadn't made me keep my trap shut. They wanted to be the ones to break the news to you, but Garrett got there first. Good old Garrett! I snorted, even though I truly did hope he and Julian made it out of the hotel in one piece. My nerves were still frayed from Alec's capture, and the last thing I needed was another family member gone missing. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have listened to them either. Stubbornness is not an attractive trait, Claire. Tori teased, sounding just a little closer to her usual self. It's a good thing my best friend is twice as stubborn as me, then. I shrugged, snickering when her eyebrows lifted. The tablet began blaring, spewing its shrill sound into the air. Ava let out a raspy grunt and flung herself to her feet. Her hazel eyes were darting around the room frantically, her hands splayed out at her sides as she readied to use her powers. Don't you dare, Ava! It's just the stupid tablet. Tori hissed, giving her shoulders a little shake. Thanks for that. I nearly put you all to sleep. Ava grumbled, rubbing at her eyes. I scrambled for the tablet, sliding it open a little easier this time. I visibly jumped off the couch when the sound of a fist against metal thrummed through the house. I broke out in a full sweat when the exhausted faces of Alec and Cade filled the screen. I unlocked the front door as I had the first time and sprinted over. They opened it before I could reach for the handle. At the sight of Alec's haggard face, my muscles coiled, and I leaped forwards. Both men staggered as I barreled into them. Alec steadied himself on Cade, who braced a hand against the wall. Both twins seemed to let out identical sighs as they registered my scent and touch. Alec's arms wound themselves around my body, tight to the point of near pain. I couldn't bring myself to care, and burrowed myself deeper into his chest. His scent was stronger from when he had been taken by Marcus's men, but all that mattered was he was safe. We are never, ever leaving your side again. Alec's voice flooded my mind, full of his usual warmth and affection. Even with the obvious exhaustion in his voice, there wasn't a single part of him that wasn't grateful to be here with us. Good, don't. Ever. I laughed, but the sound was shaky and broken. All of the stress and worry I had been shoving aside was coming back to me, weighing down on my chest until my breaths came out in fast pants. At the time, I couldn't let myself think about how close I had come to losing Alec. Now, it was all I could think about. Over my shoulder, I could feel the twins share a look. Before you guys head upstairs, think you could put him in a room? Tori asked, nodding to where Zayn lay unconscious on the couch. I'll explain later. I chimed in, my words only partially muffled from being wrapped around Alec and Cade. I've got it. Pick out a room and I'll meet you both there. You look like you're ready to fall over any minute. Cade grunted, giving Alec a once-over. He placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, giving him a look that no one other than the two of us would understand. We were both relieved beyond anything that he was back, but the guilt of not finding him sooner weighed on both of us. We were reminded of it in the way Alec's eyes were shadowed, and the way his skin had paled even further. I sent Cade the warmth and intensity of everything I felt for him, of the bond that surpassed love and spanned worlds. I could feel his reaction instantly, the way the muscles in his jaw relaxed and his shoulders loosened. In any other situation, I would have been ecstatic to be staying in a house like this. Everything was smooth and pristine, untouched or marred by anyone living. Even the windows were smallest imperfection. I would have searched this house top to bottom, and wandered every single room inside. Given the situation, and our current state of exhaustion, I opted for the first room we stumbled upon. The bed could easily fit the three of us, and even more if we tried. It was plush, set atop an oak bed frame, and was covered in a silk bedspread. I let out a small whimper as Alec walked past the bed, and towards the large bathroom. You can go to sleep, doll. Alec turned from messing with the shower and gave me a gentle smile. It was just the slight curve of one side of his mouth, but it held his usual tenderness that I had missed endlessly. The bathroom was larger than necessary, especially the shower with its 6 built-in heads. My favorite part was the long marble bench within the shower, a blessing to have when you need to shave. I couldn't help but wonder what Jasper's personal home looked like, considering his safe house was a mansion in the forest. "What happened to never leaving my side?" repeated with a hint of a smirk. "Then I suppose you'll have to shower with me." He chuckled, and I placed my hand against the hardness of his chest to feel the sound vibrate across his skin. He wrapped an arm around me, and toyed with the hem of my t-shirt. "If I slip into bed now, it's going to smell disgusting." "I think you smell good," I mumbled, not at all flustered from the way his eyes flickered down to me. Even though I wanted to stay awake, to make up for lost time, I could see how exhausted he was. I hadn't a clue how hard their trip was, or how they had managed to get free of the hotel in the first place. As Alec gripped the hem of his t-shirt, I didn't miss the way his eyes flicked up to my face, his eyes onyx and endless under the white light of the bathroom. I inched them down his hips, taking care not to catch them on his growing member. Sleep sounds less appealing with every second. Alec smiled a bit cheekily, and the sight invoked an instant reaction within me. "You won't be saying that in the morning?" I teased, pulling my own shirt from my head. I swatted his hands away when they veered towards my chest. Only when we slipped under the steam of the shower, did I let him take me into his arms. The heat of the water enveloped us, chasing away the chill and fear that had followed for so long. The glass that surrounded us began to fog, blocking our view from the open bathroom door. All thoughts of sleep went out the window. When the taste of him danced on my tongue, sweet and masculine as it wrapped around my brain and jumbled my thoughts, I could feel his rough hands roaming over every part of me, the soft flesh of my chest, down to the curve of my waist and bottom. His hands scalded the places they touched, pairing with the hot water to make my skin flush. He remorized my body, all without delving into the places he craved the most. After he mapped out my flesh with his fingertips, I settled into his embrace and watched the dirt and grime of the last few days swirl down the grated drain. Chapter 105. "Are you sure?" I gasped as my back hit the cool tile of the shower wall. It jolted up my spine and through my shoulders as the cold moisture met my skin. I wrapped my legs around Alec's waist, using him to keep my face level with his own. He had been devouring me for minutes now, leaving me flushed and shimmering with a thin sheen of sweat. Once the pine-smelling soap had carried every last ounce of dirt and grime down the drain, his hands wasted no time lifting me up to pin me against the wall. I could do nothing but whimper. "You're the one who was concerned about what I'd say in the morning." Alec chuckled slowly. "It wasn't what I wanted." He refused to place his LPS against me, to scrape his teeth against the smoothness of my flesh. Only when his LPS reached the mark that sat on my shoulder, did he finally sink his teeth into me. Stars danced behind my eyes as every muscle in my body went taut. It was his strong arms and the shower wall that kept me from falling over. Violent waves of pleasure pulsed down my neck, the swollen flesh reacted instantly to his touch, making me shake around him. With his teeth and tongue still playing with our mark, "Do you know what it's like to be separated from the one you love, only to wake up nearly a week later?" He murmured against my shoulder. "Rest assured, it's never going to happen again." He snarled, breathing heavily against my shoulder. There was a finality to his words that sent excitement skittering up my spine and down my limbs. Alec was the more playful of the two, and to see him so worked up and desperate it only reignited the fire that burned low in my stomach. As the stars faded from my eyes, I set my gaze on his. I wasn't sure how much he knew, how much Cade had managed to tell him. Did he know that I was now a soul eater, or that I had killed Desmond Deville? It won't happen again. I agreed, flushing when his eyes flickered down to the rise and fall me. A sort of possessiveness washed through me, carrying heat and need so strong that it physically hurt. I remained quiet for a few moments, catching my breath so he could hear the strength of my words. I don't know what Cade has told you, but my powers are different now. I'm a soul eater, and I've used that skill more than once. I don't know if that makes me a monster, but I've only done it to protect myself or the people I care about. If Marcus tries to take either one of you, I won't hesitate to use it again. We're all monsters in some way, doll. Even the humans. He said softly, tracing his thumb down my jaw. Our world just as brutal and cruel as theirs, only in a different way. You weren't given powers to suppress them. There was no contempt in his eyes, no flicker of anything other than pure acceptance. Alec tracked the change with darkened eyes, and pressed me tighter against the wall. I'm not going to be gentle this first time. He murmured softly, brushing the strands of hair from my forehead. Good, I wanted to say. The desperate sense of urgency that pulsed through me mimicked the feel of adrenaline. I needed him in his entirety. I was sure I'd go insane if he took his time with me, until I could take no more. The look in my eyes was confirmation enough, and he took me with a ferocity that made me gasp. He set me down on my 2 feet before nudging me closer to the glass wall of the shower. Put your hands on the glass, and don't move them. His voice was low and raspy by my ear. His hands felt like hot coals as they guided me forward. The pleasurable bite of cold lashed at me when he pushed me against the dewy glass. After spreading my legs with a nudge of his foot, he positioned himself behind me. I could feel the heat of him at my back, and every second I waited only increased the building moisture between my legs. A yelp left me when I felt the head of him rub against my CT. Electric danced through me, making me shake from how sensitive I currently was down there. As he pressed himself against my opening. Just the feel of you is going to make me come. He hissed, pain and pleasure melted into one another, tearing the light and color from my eyes. All mine, my mind had been such a haze that I hadn't thought of peering through the glass that was only inches away from my face. The water in the shower had begun to cool down, making the condensation run in thick streams. My eyes widened and a jolt of surprise raced through me when I met a pair of dark eyes. Cade was leaning against the sink, very much watching what was happening between his brother and I. My legs were spread wide, and Alec's hand was all too easy to spot. I hadn't a clue how I didn't feel the weight and heat of his eyes on my skin, or how I hadn't noticed him standing there. All while I watched his brother. You like it when my brother watches, don't you? Alec snarled in my ear, yes I love it. I gasped, spurred on by the filthy words that came from his mouth, ones laced in so much need it made me feel drugged and delirious. Oh, that's it. Alec, against my shoulder, the sound gravely and dazed. His words incoherent. I was first to topple over the edge, followed by Alec and then Cade. I remained where I was for a few moments, feeling the moisture leak from between my legs. When I was sure I could move without falling over, I went to turn the water heat back up. Cade hopped in the shower with us, which means I had to smack 2 sets of wandering hands away as I rinsed the shampoo from my hair. Once I felt like I had scrubbed the grime of the high table from beneath my skin, I wrapped myself in the softest towel to ever exist. We should upgrade our safe houses. Cade pointed out as both he and Alec emerged from the shower. I had no clue you guys had safe houses. I shook my head, there's so much I still don't know about my own pack. Alex stepped forward and gave me one of his lopsided grins. The sight made relief blossom, proof that he was still himself after what he had been through. No one blames you for not knowing much. He reassured me, tugging at the towel I had around my torso. His grin only widened when I relented and let the warm piece of fabric fall to the ground. The high table has been gunning for you since the very beginning. Once all of this is over, you'll have the time to learn everything you want to know. I was silenced by him before I could say anything further. My train of thought was derailed completely when we broke apart, and my two mates lead me to our inviting bed. I was woken to the sound of shouting, two heated voices clashing against one another. It took me a few minutes to register where I was, and who I was with. Both the twins' masculine scents lulled me back into that blissful line between sleep and consciousness. When the faces of Tori and Zayn flashed in my mind, I jolted up from the bed, the haze permanently broken. Cade reacted first to my movements, sitting up as his eyes scanned the room. Alec was just a few seconds later. I'm not sure if she's brave or a fool for going back for him. Cade sighed, his voice still deliciously rough from the early morning hours. He ran a hand down his face and glanced towards the windows, staring at the sliver of sunlight that peeked through. We're going to have to keep them from killing each other. Something tells me we're all running on just a few hours of sleep. Thankfully, the closets were fully stocked with clothes. It was a hit or miss to see what fit best, but after a few tries I found something that covered the important parts. With every movement the muscles in my legs ached, along with the welt on my B0TTOM, which may or may not be in the shape of Cade's hand. We came downstairs just in time to see a red-faced Tori emerge from the kitchen. Ava was perched on the couch, looking much like a cat would as its eyes drifted lazily at the chaos unfolding. She held a bag of chips in her hand, shoving one into her mouth as she watched Tori. The distinct scent of barbecue chips permeated the air, along with the acidic taste of Tori's rage. Zayn, unbothered as ever, was seated at the end of the sectional. A crystal glass of what I suspected was alcohol sat on the table beside him. After a whiff in his direction, I could easily tell he had been drinking. Day drinking already? Cade asked, his voice flat. I spent the last 4 hours sleeping, slowly healing from my father's favorite brand of T0RTURE. I can feel the silver in my veins still, and the Advil in the cabinet isn't going to help. Zayn snapped, but rolled his eyes and huffed when Cade took a step forward. The man wasn't drunk, but his guard was most definitely lowered from however much alcohol he had consumed. Tori came out from the kitchen with 2 plates in her hands. Thick pancakes rose from the plate in a tower of golden sticky syrup. A stack of bacon sat on each side of the plates, sending the smoky scent into the air. She handed one to Ava and sat down beside her. Oh, I didn't expect you 3 up so early. Tori cleared her throat, trying to hide some of the anger that still pulsed through her. Since you patched me up with your mediocre sewing skills, think you could bring me a plate of food? Zayn swiveled his eyes towards Tori and asked smoothly, his face a mask of cool indifference. I'd hate to tear a stitch and have to suffer through a repeat. I instinctively took a step back when Tori set her plate on the table, making it clatter as she stormed to her feet. Her emotions were a thunderstorm of anger, resentment, regret, and just a whisper of need. Her emotions had been stronger since Zayn rejected her, more volatile when it came to his petty jabs. I couldn't blame her, knowing how she felt whenever he was near. Rejection turned happiness to anger, and joy out of every moment. It felt like seeing the world in black and white, when everyone around you marveled at the colors. If it weren't for my mediocre sewing job, as you so ignorantly call it, you'd still be bleeding out. Not to mention Ava and I carried your heavy as through the forest for hours to get you here. She snarled, her fists clenched at her sides. I was nearly 80% sure that if he weren't already injured, Tori would have swung at him. Her voice grew a few octaves as she sharpened her words and flung them like daggers. I have never met someone so ungrateful. If you put as much effort into doing the right thing as you did complaining, you would have rescued half the white wolves in your father's pack by now. What was even stranger than the anger that crackled and surrounded Tori like tendrils of flame, was what I felt coming from Zayn. Since meeting Zayn Novak, I felt next to nothing when it came to his emotions. He had been refined by his father, molded and morphed into the damaged man he was today. I wasn't sure how much he had to drink, but it was affecting that carefully crafted wall he placed over his emotions. The wall held them back, making him all but numb to the world. It was how he survived, a defense mechanism bashed into him by Marcus. I saw it for what it was, a way to survive the horrors of his life without being affected. This new side of Zayn, the one where his wall was lowered, it gave me a glimpse at him. I wasn't sure what kind of emotions a man like Zayn would feel, but the last I expected to find was amusement. It shimmered and danced like a flame, playful where Tori was fueled with frustration. Every ounce of the emotion was directed at her, and the way her face reddened and her emerald eyes flared like glittering jewels. He was enjoying this, seeing her worked up and angry with him. Most of the time, feeling others' emotions gives me a glimpse into why they do the things they do. Feeling Zayn's emotions for the first time, the man clearly had some deep-rooted issues if he was enjoying this, purposefully riling her up for whatever reason he could concoct in his head. When Tori finished snapping at Zayn, she turned on her heel and stormed back into the kitchen. I could hear the clatter of dishes and her furious mumbling as she rummaged around. "She's going to take your head off if you keep with her." I frowned down at him, only feeling irked when my comment rolled off of his shoulders. "She's so very easy to rile up." He moved an eyebrow at me. "By all means, give me some other form of entertainment while I'm stuck here. Try watching TV like a normal person." I replied dryly, narrowing my eyes at him when Tori walked back into the room with a plate in her hand. She stopped in front of Zayn, when he gave her an oily smile. "Fine, do what you want. There's plenty of room in the backyard to bury you once she's finished." "Oh, but she won't kill me." Zayn shook his head confidently, bringing the crystal glass to him. His frost-colored eyes remained locked on Tori, and didn't waver when she dropped the plate on his lap. "Don't make a mess, I'm not helping you bathe yourself," she hissed, drawing back all of the anger that previously exploded from her. I commended her strength, because the amount of energy behind her emotions was staggering. "Care to bet on it?" he replied darkly, knowledge flashing in his eyes. "Wouldn't be the first time you've lost." What he said had an impact on Tori, and made her bristle. She snatched up her own plate and headed towards the stairs, stopping to give me an apologetic smile. "I'll catch up with you guys in a few hours," she promised, turning her eyes to Zayn. They narrowed upon impact and her words sharpened. "I think I'll finish my breakfast in my room." Zayn glanced down at his plate and frowned. "Who doesn't put syrup on their pancakes? I'm not a complete monster." Tori ignored him, which he rightfully deserved, and went upstairs. I followed the twins into the kitchen, surprised that Tori hadn't just cooked for her and Ava. A stack of pancakes sat beneath a plastic cover, along with the rest of your typical breakfast foods. I snickered when the twins began piling their plates up high, even though I was incredibly relieved Alec was eating solid foods. The sight of them with plates bigger than their heads, it brought a shred of normalcy back into our lives. As I sat at the kitchen table eating with them, I let my mind wander to what things could be like after this was over. I still hadn't forgotten my idea of a bakery, even though I wasn't sure when I'd ever have the time to run a shop when I fully became Luna. Being Luna doesn't have to run your life, sweetheart. Kate said in between forkfuls of pancake. Lately we've been reading each other's thoughts more and more, using that channel of communication. For some reason, it felt more natural to share my thoughts with them. You should always have time to do the things you love. Well, I don't exactly know how to bake. I chuckled, shoving another forkful of eggs into my mouth. Beth taught me some things, but really she just kind of told me what to do. Mom would love to help you. She's been complaining lately that there isn't much to do. Well, she said that before all of this started. Alec grinned, leaning back in his seat. The conversation quickly turned to their parents, and if they were currently safe. The twins' parents had sent them ahead to the safe house, opting to head home to make sure Julian and Garrett made it out safely. With Marcus stirring up a nationwide manhunt for us, the best thing to do was lay low. When it was safe to travel, then we could head home. It was the safest place for us, to be within the borders of our own pack. They'll be in touch with us either today or tomorrow. Kate reassured me with a soft look, when it's time for us to leave, we're going to need their help. Hopefully the search will have calmed down by then, but I doubt it. Marcus won't quit that easily, and we don't have weeks to hide out here. I think Jasper might be able to help as well. I explained, going through what exactly happened when his daughter wrapped her hand around my wrist. Both of my mates seemed stunned at Jasper's involvement with rescuing the White Wolves, even though this was his safe house we were staying in. His help could change the outcome of this war, depending on who Marcus calls to his side. Alec frowned, and I could already see the gears turning in his head. The twins helped clean the kitchen once we finished eating. Alec was still loading the dishwasher, so I wandered out to the living room. Ava was still perched on the couch, a bag of chips in hand. Her eyes were glued to the television, and the colorful show that played across the screen. Marcus doesn't let us have junk food. Ava rolled her eyes, not that most of us see him personally anyway. He just keeps us healthy so he can study us, and use us when he needs. Which is why I plan on eating whatever I want while I'm away. For some reason, I'm not surprised. I said, my voice grim. I glanced up to where Tori had gone, feeling a pang of guilt hit me. What she was going through wasn't easy, and I hadn't been there as much as I could have. I made a beeline for the stairs when Ava's voice called out to me. I'm not going to even try understanding Zayn, but as someone who's known him for a long time, I can tell when he cares about something. The more he feels for your friend, the more he's going to push her away. Ava frowned, but the serious expression only lasted a second before she shrugged. Doesn't mean he isn't a manipulative, but your friend seems like she can handle herself. I wasn't sure what to say to that, or whether it should bring some shred of comfort or not. Zayn was so deeply rooted in the lifestyle his father had created, that he shoved anyone he cared for away. It was a way to protect them, and himself. Regardless, a person could only take so much before they shattered entirely. I made it to the top of the stairs when I heard a deep groan, followed by some quietly muttered words. I stopped myself before I turned the corner, nearly speaking when I saw Zayn crouched on the floor of the hallway. Beside him was Tori, her face contorted in a grimace as she helped him up. I told you not to drink so much. She hissed angrily, draping his arm over her shoulder to shift some of his weight onto her. And you've torn your stitches. Quit helping me. He snarled back, but there was no venom in his words considering Tori held up most of his weight. Even though I should have turned back long ago, I stood there watching until Tori opened the door to her bedroom and walked the two of them inside. As she closed the door behind her, I swore I could hear her say, "I wish I could." Chapter 106. The twins' parents contacted us nearly an entire day later. While they had the address for the safe house, there was no way for us to contact anyone in the outside world. There were no telephones in the entire house, and our own cell phones were lost or broken during the chaos. "They won't come here," Kate reassured me. "Marcus's men could be anywhere. Coming here would only bring trouble." Even though I cherished these hours with the twins, they were wrought with anxiety. I couldn't help but feel like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next move to be made. Marcus had clearly made the first move, ordering my capture along with Tori and the twins. It was our turn, but we were in no position to do anything. Both Tori and Zayn stayed in their rooms for most of the day, managing to come downstairs at different intervals. While it might have been chance, I had the distinct feeling they were completely avoiding each other. I thought back to last night and the interaction between the two of them, wondering if something more might have happened once she shut the door behind them. Ava had actually stayed in the living room all night. The twins and I had come downstairs to her wrapped in a cocoon of blankets, with various snacks littered around her body. While she didn't go any further into detail, Ava mentioned her large family and the closeness between them all. The day passed slowly, but the twins had their ways of distracting me. In truth, I think they needed the distraction as well. I knew that not only were they worried about the countless white wolves within Marcus's walls, but they were worrying about their own pack. Actual war, it's not something an 18-year-old ever thinks they might experience. Where the concept was once concrete in my mind, I now couldn't wrap my head around it. Even with the confusion and guilt, I knew I'd remain strong. It wasn't just about me and my freedom anymore, it was about the freedom of thousands. I was finding it hard to sleep that night, even after hours spent in their embrace. I listened to the ringing in my ears when the silence became too deafening, staring up into the darkness that cloaked the ceiling. The twins had both fallen asleep already, even though I knew both would wake from little more than a whisper. I was the first to hear the featherlight knock on the door. Both Alec and Cade woke up, awareness already forming in their eyes. You could have easily convinced me I was dreaming when Cade opened the door to reveal a pale-looking Zayn leaning against the frame. The three of us were silent long enough for Zayn to roll his eyes and come walking in. I could feel how he forced himself to stand upright, to shove and bottle his pain until his entire body throbbed. "Look, Tori's the one who knows all of the medical stuff," I told him, crossing my arms over my chest. "You're going to have to get over being around her so she can fix your wounds. I'll only end up doing more damage, the twins even worse. I am not here for medical attention," he said through clenched teeth, his eyes hardened into sheets of ice. "I am here because this is the only way to speak with you without her overhearing. As you're well aware, she's difficult to get along with. I don't need her interfering in these plans, not when they can tip the scales in this war. We'll go back to the part where Tori is the difficult one later, but explain this plan." I toned my snarl down into a venomous whisper. "Staying in the shadows only works for so long, Zayn, especially with something this big. This isn't just about rescuing a few white wolves, it doesn't just end with that. Not anymore. I understand clearly what's going on, more than you know. I'm all but signing my DH warrant." He grunted, walking slow and stiff to the couch across the room. There was pain in his stiff movements, even if they looked formal and polite. Shadows hung in the depths of his eyes, and his emotions were just as blocked as they had been when he was sober. "I fully intend on coming out of the shadows, at the right moment. When you take my father's head, I will be the one to bring him to his knees." As much as I despised Zayn, and only tolerated him for the sake of this war and Tori. This was what we needed. We needed the upper hand, an advantage against the most powerful person in our world. What's your plan? Alec was the first to ask, his once carefree face now hardened from equal parts loathing and determination. First, I need you to tell me something. Zayn said, his eyes directly on me. How is it that my father found out about our involvement with rescuing your mate here? I figured Jasper hadn't the time to tell Zayn with him getting dragged off, but the two actively worked together, which meant I trusted him with the truth. A white wolf that Marcus brought, she saw the memory in my mind when she touched me. I explained as best I could, recounting the woman that had bumped into me. Cleo. She works for my father willingly. You'll find that not all white wolves are unhappy with their positions. They thrive just as much on cruelty as my father. Zayn said darkly, the only good thing out of this, Cleo can only see a single memory at a time, and she has to know what to look for. My father must have fed her the information about your missing mate, and she followed the path in your head. This is a good thing. How? Kate asked, sitting beside me on the couch. I sat between my twins, thankful that I wasn't still tossing and turning in bed. Hopefully discussing war plans would help calm my mind. Marcus has no reason to trust you knowing that you helped us. Cleo's abilities are like watching a recap of a television show. She can't hear your thoughts or most of the conversation. The longer she keeps contact with you, the more details she can get. She must have seen just enough for my father to assume guilt. He explained, his eyes peering out the window, to the darkness that peeked between the CS. Which means he's still clueless about my involvement with the White Wolves. He also has no knowledge of our agreement or the reasons behind my helping you. You're going to feed him a story, something that would put you in the clear. I pieced it together, feeling my stomach sink for both Tori and Zayn. You're going to go back? Yes, I am going to go back. I plan on leaving tomorrow night. He answered smoothly, his eyes betraying nothing. I will tear his pack down from the inside, while you gather your armies. That small shred within me that still housed the fearful human girl she wanted to run for the hills. It was becoming all too real for her, some magical fantasy turned dark and by. She had signed up for the endless, eternal love, not the magical enslavement, and lies. How does war work? I asked plainly, even though the question itself wasn't stupid in the slightest. Packs always formally announce acts of war against one another. They're recorded so we can always remember our history. Surprisingly, it was Zayn who explained. I like to think that he wanted to speak, to distract himself from whatever mess was going on inside of his head. At times, an alpha will challenge another to single combat, to save their packs the pain and loss of war. I don't suppose Marcus would be interested in single combat. I suggested with a brittle laugh that quickly sputtered out. My father will not show such courtesy. He will use every ounce of power at his disposal, even if it means sending his warriors to their deaths. Zayn said in a gravelly voice. Most of the warriors are just a formality, bodies to protect the white wolves that are his most powerful. What's this story you plan on giving to Marcus? Kate asked, his dark eyes like bright orbs in the poorly lit room. I assume it'll paint Claire and I as the enemies. As bad as it sounds, I think that's the smartest thing to do. I frowned, that's what Marcus is trying to do, show the world that we're the bad guys. If his own son shows up telling a story about how we held him against his will, it'll give Marcus even more reason to believe it. Then what's the story? Cade grunted, some of the hardness in his eyes eroded as he looked down at me. Well, we caught Zayn off guard and attacked him. We forced him to help us get Alec back and left him in one of the hotel rooms when we were finished. I suggested, knowing that the story had holes. It was the best I could come up with at 3 in the morning. He's going to piss me regardless, so I better get my stories straight. Zayn said evenly, without a trace of emotion. What hurt me the most was how nonchalant he sounded, as though that kind of punishment was normal growing up. Won't he just use Cleo on you once you get back home? I pointed out, knowing that could ruin his plans before they even begun. Once I'm in my father's pack, I have allies of my own. There are a lot of protective abilities among the White Wolves, and more than enough owe me a favor or two. He replied without looking away from the window, we're going to need more details. If you and Cade subdued me, why did I not simply mind link my father or his men? I paused for a moment, working through the steps. We used silver on you, enough to knock you out and cut your connection to your pack. I said a bit slowly, feeling the pieces click together in my mind. Up until we went there, you had no clue the house existed. Won't Marcus know that? Cade asked, which turned out to be a very good point. I'll tell him I've known about it the entire time. Zayn shrugged, meeting Cade's eyes. I know he purchased it nearly a year and a half ago, and who the buyer was, which will be proof enough for him. Once we had Alec back, we left you in one of the hotel suites. We knew you couldn't miss this meeting or it would draw attention, so we injected you with just enough to knock you out for an hour. It wore off in time for the meeting, which you then showed up for. You didn't have the time to tell Marcus what happened, because the meeting had already begun. I concluded, feeling somewhat proud with myself. What about Ava? Won't he know from Claire's memory that she was there as well? Cade pointed out. Your cynical nature is really proving handy on this one, brother. Alex smirked from beside me. How long did Cleo touch you for? Zayn asked, his voice sharp. I need you to be as accurate as possible. It couldn't have been for more than a few seconds, but there's no way for me to know for sure. I replied, refusing to balk under his gaze. It's a risk we'll have to take. He said with finality, she was with Cade for the first half. Let's hope that's the part that Cleo viewed. While I wasn't exactly happy with sending Zayn back to his father, it wasn't a horrible plan. If it worked, it would give us that upper hand we desperately needed. In the end, it was Zayn's choice to make, but there was still something bothering me. I could feel it in my chest, picking and scratching as it made itself known. Why can't we tell her, Zayn? I asked seemingly out of the blue. She understands just as well as anyone that you make your own choices. If this works, it could change things, but it's your risk to take. She will know nothing about it, Claire. He said harshly, his cool demeanor turning bitter. I could feel next to nothing from his emotions, and the wall he had erected around them. Brick by brick, Zayn and his father built that wall. I don't want her mixed in with what I am doing, and not for the sentimental reasons I'm sure are going through your head right now. She has no place in any of this. I might be stuck working with you three, but she is a distraction I never asked for. I wasn't sure if he noticed that last part had slipped out, but his anger was palpable. The twins stiffened on either side of me, but I quickly told them both to cool it. When Zayn had first showed up at the door of the twins' cabin, I felt absolutely nothing from him. The wall around him was of thick granite, impenetrable and solid. After meeting Tori, the rock began to chip and erode, seared by her intensity and passion. That wall around him was going to shatter, and I only hoped Tori was free from the explosion when it did. Against my better judgment, I pushed again. He was finally doing the right thing, standing up to Marcus in the one way that mattered. He was stepping into the light and accepting his role in creating this new future, but I still couldn't fathom why Tori couldn't be a part of this new future with him. One where Marcus wasn't there to exact control over him, one where he was free to choose Tori. What you're doing doesn't make any sense, Zayn. Did Marcus mess you up that badly that you can't see what you're giving up? She's literally meant for you, in all of your ignorant, stubborn ways. I scoffed, hardening my face as anger flashed in his eyes. We're trying to change things for everyone, to create something new and better. There is no reason for you to be doing this to her. She deserves better, and yet she's saddled with you. Anger sizzled and burned through the cracks in his wall, though the emotion wasn't scalding like Tori's was. Zayn's anger was through lashes of ice and spider webs of bitter frost. I don't have to explain anything to you, not a single thing. He snapped, his voice dripping with rage. He stood from the couch, his hands trembling as he clenched them at his sides. He never even bothered looking at the twins as he turned and walked stiffly from the room. Just as he opened the door, I spoke loud enough for him to hear. Your emotions come out when you're drunk, Zayn. You can't hide that. The door clicked shut, sending the room spiraling into silence for the second time. Zayn's plan was a good one, but it was one full of danger. In my mind, Tori had a right to know. She was a part of this mess, hunted by Marcus for simply being important to me. While I supported Zayn's choice, I knew I couldn't lie to her. My hope about war meetings and sleep had come true. Wedged between Alec and Cade, with nothing more than their body heat and a thin sheet to keep me warm, I floated in that blissful space between sleep and awareness. My eyes were torn open by sunlight-covered daggers that clashed in my brain as they collided. Aware of nothing more than the pain and the sheet tangled around my legs, I groaned and heaved myself into a sitting position. Get dressed, sweetheart. Cade grunted, walking past me with a lot more speed than usual. A shirt and a pair of jeans was tossed on the bed in front of me, but I was still having trouble processing. Instead of asking questions, I stood and took a few minutes to get dressed. I must have been moving too slowly because Alex strolled over to help me. You're a very heavy sleeper. He smirked, slipping my arms through the shirt holes. Did something happen? I asked, fighting to keep the grogginess from my voice. Yeah, something happened. Alec grunted, his relaxed demeanor replaced with one of frustration. Zayn left last night. Like a bucket of water splashed against the side of my head, I was fully awake from that point onward. Alec and I came downstairs to a furious Tori, and Cade who took the brunt of it. Were you going to tell me that he planned on leaving? Tori snapped, her narrowed eyes on Cade. When she noticed Alec and I standing in the doorway, her emerald eyes fall on us. Were any of you going to tell me? I was going to tell you, I swear. I promised her, leaving Alec's side to step forward. I could feel the anger and betrayal radiating from her, sinking into my skin like razor-sharp daggers. He said he wasn't leaving until tomorrow night. I figured it could have waited until the morning. I had no clue he was going to leave a few hours later. She looked skeptical, and the thought of her doubting me made my chest throb and ache. I masked the pain and hoped she could see the truth, that I wouldn't keep something like this from her, not about her own mate. The moment Zayn told us what he planned, Claire made the decision in her mind to tell you. Cade spoke up for me, meeting Tori's gaze head-on. His voice was strong and sure when he spoke, on mine and my brother's honor as alphas. Claire had every intention on telling you before Zayn left. Little by little, the suspicion in her eyes dissolved, taking the pain in my chest along with it. The rest of the day was wrought with tension, as that looming sensation of the world holding its breath grew stronger. After a few hours of mindlessly watching television or exploring the house, I was ready to break free from this place. What I hated worse than the violence and betrayal was the waiting for something to happen. As the clock on the far wall hit 10 o'clock, the tablet on the table erupted in a shrill blaring around. Where it was first annoying in volume, it ratcheted up when the sound connected to the speakers on the television. Alec came running into the room, a plate of forgotten food in his hand. There was nothing on the screen, nothing but darkness. The shrill sound continued for a few more seconds, when a click sounded from the television mounted on the wall. The television blinked on, bringing bright light and the enlarged image of Jasper Fox's face. He was standing a few feet away from the camera, his onyx hair an untidy mess on his head. The leather jacket he wore was ripped in a few places, and the patches were peeling off. He looked at the camera, and began speaking. "Hello, Claire. If you're getting this message, it means I am dead." Chapter 107. Hello, Claire. If you're getting this message, it means I am dead. Every muscle and fiber in my body locked up at his words. His face remained plastered on the screen, while Delilah's played in my mind. My stomach rolled at the thought of something happening to that little girl, of Marcus getting his hands on her. Her strange teleportation abilities would certainly pique his interest, which I'm sure was why Jasper kept her hidden from the world. Your current location is safe, for now. I have prepared evacuation plans for you and your crew. 3 days after you receive this message, a man and woman will knock on the front door. Trust these people with your lives, go where they take you, and for the sake of the future stay alive. The television clicked off, blanketing the room in darkness. After a total of 2 seconds, I scrambled from where I stood for the remote. Before I could grab it, Alex snatched it from the table and flicked onto the news. I had no clue what channels were human news and what were werewolf, but the twins seemed to know just fine. Mere hours ago, a battle took place when head of the High Table, Marcus Novak, sent his troops through the lines of ex-High Table member, Jasper Fox's territory. What began as a casual encounter quickly turned carnal when Mr. Fox unleashed his warriors on the troops. Multiple rumors had depicted Mr. Fox's pack as a safe haven of sorts for white wolves, forcing the High Table's hand. As it currently stands, no evidence of white wolves has been found on Mr. Fox's land. A somber newscaster with doe eyes and heart-shaped L.P.S. frowned, giving the camera a look of genuine sympathy. I'll pass this on to Nathan Dollahove, who is currently at the scene of what marks the end of Mr. Fox's reign. The screen shifted, now showing a man in a casual suit, standing in front of the charred husk of a house. Its wooden bones were blackened, leaning as it held itself together with nothing more than luck and a few stubborn nails. Nathan Dollahove looked at the camera, brushing back his golden hair with a hand, and began speaking. I'm here at the Fox's family estate, and what looks to be a tragic accident that claimed the lives of Jasper Fox, his mate Emily Fox, and their daughter, Delilah Fox. One of our paramedics on scene have confirmed that 3 sets of remains were found. The origin of the fire is currently being investigated, spearheaded by Jasper Fox's eldest son. When we return in an hour, I hope to glean more information from the head of our High Table, Marcus Novak. The screen changed again, flitting back to the brunette with sad eyes. Until the High Table's investigation surrounding Jasper Fox have been concluded, he is assumed innocent from all accused crimes. Our team, along with agents from the High Table, interviewed many of Jasper Fox's pack members. All vehemently expressed their alpha's innocence, even though a mere hour before Marcus Novak entered their land, Mr. Fox transferred all power and titles to his eldest son. She spoke, her unwavering gaze on the camera. He made his son Alpha, and a member of the high table. Alec scoffed, swiping a hand across his jaw. His face was illumined by the television, making the darkness in his eyes swirl. He knew this was going to end in a fight, the man was prepared for it. Question is, do we think he's still alive? Would he really go through all of the trouble to fake his family's DTH? Tori questioned, her eyebrows knitting together as she picked at a few stray fibers on the pants she wore. They would have had to acquire 3 bodies, and be in them. Which is deeply unsettling. Not nearly as unsettling as what Marcus would do to them if caught. Cade grunted, settled on the couch with his elbows on top of his thighs. Strands of hair fell in his face, but my attention was quickly diverted back to the screen when the woman continued speaking. The entirety of Mr. Fox's land has been combed through, and within these next few days, the High Table will send warriors to scour the packs that surround Mr. Fox's. It is within the best interest of these packs that you cooperate with the High Table and trust them to uncover the truth. As the largest broadcasting company for our kind, we will provide hourly updates on the progress of this investigation and the even more elusive search for the Soul Eater and her companions, which has thus far been fruitless. In precisely 1 hour, we will return with more information for these cases, both of which are the biggest we've seen in decades. She continued, her face neutral and her words perfectly spoken. A croak left my L.P.S. when 3 pictures of me flashed on the screen. All were from the hotel and the high table meetings. I'm Sarah Barnes, and thank you for tuning in. The television then changed to some singing commercial, which Alex silenced almost immediately. I knew without my abilities, that we were all at a loss for words. The fact that we were all wanted by the most powerful man in our world, it was a hard pill to swallow. Every single pack would be on the lookout for us, and we were away from home. We sat in silence for the entire hour, having nothing better to do than to sit and watch. It was almost funny in a strange way. We were watching updates on our own manhunt. While the world watched and wondered where we were, they hadn't a clue we were watching as well. Unsurprisingly, after an hour, no further evidence on either case had been found. The High Table still couldn't find us, though if they had any leads, there was no way they'd spill. They did, however, go over nearly every detail of my life starting with when I first moved in with Melissa and Frank. The only time Garrett or Julian was mentioned, was when my inheritance was brought up. The twins could feel my own mood souring as Sarah Barnes recounted the worst years of my life. She even gave some information on the twins, and even a small segment about Tori. I felt utterly drained afterwards, and jumped when Alex's voice tore through the silence. We've been reduced to companions, Cade. Alex scoffed, finally breaking the silence. Can you believe it? They could have at least included a picture of us. Cade turned towards Alec, with an incredulous look on his face. The sight made me want to laugh, especially with the stress that had just been thrown on us. I was comatose for nearly a week, and missed out on the entire meeting. Alec raised an eyebrow at his brother, daring him to say something. I didn't miss how the last sentence was said a bit sourly. I could tell what irritated him the most was that Marcus's men had managed to snag him. Forgive me for wanting accurate news. The least they could have done was mention mine and Tori's kidnapping. I do have a name other than Soul Eater. I pointed out, giving Cade the same frown Alec was currently making. I'm pretty sure I only heard my actual name one time. Soul Eater sounds kind of badass though. Makes people think twice about messing with you. Tori shrugged from where she sat across the sectional. Alec gave her an exasperated look. You seem awful calm considering they did you even worse than Cade and I. It's just the news. Tori shrugged, the details of the story all depend on the person telling it. They called you Claire's assistant? Alec deadpanned, jumping when my unrestrained laughter startled him. Perhaps it was all of the stress that finally made me crack, or how truly dumbfounded Alec felt talking to Tori and Cade, but my sides ached and my eyes watered as I laughed at the three of them. Alec was second to join in, followed by Tori. Even Cade chuckled, which was the most I'd get out of him right now. 3 days. I sighed after finally catching my breath. I fell back on the couch and sighed when Alec's fingers brushed through my hair. 3 more days of waiting. I think I hate the waiting more than anything else. For 3 days we spent as much time as possible with one another. After rummaging through the overstocked pantry in Jasper's safe house, I concluded that I was tired of all things in shiny packages. It was the heinous workout sessions in the morning that helped me maintain some semblance of self-defense, other than my ability to tear the soul from someone's body. On the 3rd day, at 10 in the morning, a sequence of heavy thuds sounded on the door. The tablet with its security cameras beeped, pulling up an image of a man and woman. When we opened the front door for them, I wasn't the only one who was a bit dumbfounded. The woman was in her early 30s, but was dressed well like a tourist. Her t-shirt said, "I Heart New York," and she wore an actual visor on her head, along with a pair of wide-framed sunglasses. Her cargo shorts and thick-soled shoes completed and confirmed the tourist outfit. The man at her side was dressed much the same. Cargo shorts and a black pack, along with an identical pair of thick-soled shoes. While their clothes completely threw us off, I did not miss the alertness in their emotions, or the muscles that protruded from just about every surface of their body. "We are here to escort Ms. Claire, her mates, and friend." It was the man who spoke, towering over Tori and I. My own surprise shocked me, as did the man's voice when he spoke. It was light, carefree, and actually kind of happy considering the circumstances. I could feel that positive attitude as it radiated from him in warm waves. He looked a bit gruff with the shaved head and thick beard, but the grin on his face transformed him from threatening warrior to gentle giant. "Looks like we found the right place. The name is Dex, and my cheerful partner is Carson. You won't be needing to take anything with you," Carson said in a harsher tone, one that said we needed to get going. Her demeanor was different from Dex's, much sterner and more serious. "Let's get going." We had to leave the van on an access road. These shoes aren't meant for hiking through the forest. During the day, the house looked much different. It wasn't the first time we had stepped outside since arriving at the safe house, but I still couldn't get used to how large it truly was. I found myself both relieved and anxious as we walked down the steps, towards where the forest and yard met. "What's with the clothes, anyway?" Tori was brave enough to ask, moving an eyebrow at the t-shirt she wore. "Right now, your friend the most important person in our world. Considering she doesn't let it go to her head, she could really change things for all of us." Carson tossed over her shoulder without looking back. The French braid that ran down her back swayed as she walked. "She needs protection, but we can't drive down the highway with an armored vehicle and 6 escorts. Marcus Novak would be on us within minutes. A disguise might just buy us enough time to get you to the drop-off." "Are back roads not available?" I asked. "Marcus is gonna have those monitored first, considering they're smaller and more likely to be used by you fugitives," Dex said with a deep laugh, like 2 boulders clashing together. I looked back to where he tailed us, unable to refrain from cracking a smile. "The highway is just as dangerous as the back roads, but it'll save us a good 2 hours," Carson said from the front, increasing her pace to where Alec and Cade had to help me from tripping over everything. I kept eyes on the ground, stepping over the stray roots and plants. I nearly fell to the ground as my foot slid on a patch of mud. It was Alec's arms underneath my shoulders that kept me from being coated in the substance. What a dangerous soul eater you are! He smirked low in my ear, sending a flood of emotions through me that were not appropriate for the time and place. The access road was a thin dirt road that stretched off into the forest. The trees parted for the little dirt road, allowing just a sliver of the cloudless sky to shine overhead. The air was brisk and cool, much different from my time spent in the Twins Pack, where the sun and humidity were constantly at war. This time I did laugh as we came upon a navy-colored minivan. It wasn't the floral seat covers that made me chuckle, but the wide array of bumper stickers on the back. One said my child made honor roll this year. Another read, Dog Mom. On the back window were a cluster of those stickman families. A muscular-looking stickman posed as the father, along with a mother, 4 children, and a dog. Just another family traveling for vacation. Dex grinned, patting the hood of the van with a firm hand. Is this thing even safe? Tori asked, lifting an eyebrow at Dex. Oh, you bet it is. His smile widened as though this question pleased him. He led Tori around to the side of the van and opened it up. This thing is full of reinforced steel and bulletproof glass. Doesn't even weigh her down. Apart from the mix of country and rock music trickling through the dull speakers of the minivan, there was nothing but silence and the whoosh of the passing cars to fill my mind. I sat at the very center in between Alec and Cade, while Tori sat in the far back. So, how do you know Jasper? I asked, finally finding the courage. Dex and Carson glanced at one another, a long look that just screamed silent conversation. Mr. Fox's was a high table member. He knows a lot of people, werewolves, and humans. Carson responded in a tone that let me know I'd get no further information. Her emotions weren't ones of aggression or anger, just fierce protectiveness and a professionalism that most people could never accomplish. An hour of mountains and steep inclines passed before we had no choice but to stop. Both Dex and Carson agreed on stopping at the smallest, most decrepit gas station to ever grace this earth. It was nothing more than a small shack, big enough to fit a handful people at the very most. An old-fashioned cash register sat on top of a fold-out table. A very disinterested-looking man stood at the table, picking at something beneath his nails. Carson went inside the shack for the 4 of us, getting bottles of water and insignificant snacks. Both Tori and I headed around back to where the cashier claimed were bathrooms. What we found was one of those portable bathrooms, and from the looks of it, it had been sitting her for longer than either of us had walked this earth. At this point, I feel like it would be safer to go into the woods and use the bathroom. Tori snorted, though the comment was 100% accurate. Were you not able to go? Cade asked with a tilt of his head, once we both returned. Tori and I scrunched our noses in sync. No, that bathroom is a safety hazard. Hazmat should be called immediately. Carson was a bit disgruntled at having to stop again, but it was better and faster than venturing into the forest. Yet another desolate gas station with an extremely questionable bathroom, but it was an improvement from the last one. We remained out of sight the entire time, hidden behind the tinted windows of the minivan. After another half hour, I was beginning to grow tired. Burrowed in Alec's side, my eyes fluttered. I hovered on the cusp of sleep when I was ripped away, my eyes torn open as anger and determination radiated from 4 of the people in the vehicle. Is something wrong? I asked, pulling away from Alec to look around. We were still coasting down the highway, signs and other cars whizzing by. No matter how hard I looked, I couldn't see anything amiss. Let's hope not. Cade grunted from where he sat, turning around to wake Tori up. What's wrong? She asked, cracking her neck with a soft groan. We're being followed. Dex answered, all humor gone from his face. If anything, I think I preferred the laughing, joking Dex. Serious Dex was downright frightening. It brought more attention to his hulking physique, which wasn't as muscular as it was mountain-like. Carson pulled a cell phone from the pocket of her cargo shorts and placed the phone to her ear. Coming up on exit 74. We're being followed by a black Nissan. How is traffic from your standpoint? She asked, forcing the words from her mouth in rapid succession. There are others up ahead. I asked, leaning forwards in my seat. You didn't think we came alone, did you? Dex smirked in the rearview mirror. It was too risky to have the others get close, so we have them stationed at different points on the highway. They'll let us know if anything is up ahead. They must have spotted us somehow. Carson cursed, pulling the phone from her ear to type out a message. Traffic is coming to a complete stop within the next 50 miles. We have 20 minutes to get off. Watch out. Tori's scream was timed perfectly, as a Mack truck veered onto the median from the other side of the highway, and into the left lane where we currently were. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.